Of the Bucks-Celtics series in Milwaukee when they limited Giannis, they built the wall, and they stopped Giannis. Well, things have changed in Game 2 and Game 3. Giannis Antetokounmpo in Boston in Game 3 had 32 points. He was 8 for 13, and he went to the line 22 times.
I get uncomfortable when I hear the term build the wall.
I understand. What do you see from Giannis in Game 2 and Game 3 that's so different than Game 1?
Shooters are making shots. He's continuing to attack. But what ends up happening is when Middleton is making shots, Lopez is making shots, Mirotic is making shots. George Hill has been playing well and making shots. No doubt about it. Now all of a sudden, you have to get closer to your guy. And even off the bench, they've been getting quality production for Pat Connaughton. And so for a Bucks team that's been the best shooting team in the entire NBA, now all of a sudden, you got a guy that's playing basically 5 positions on offense, 5 positions on defense, and how you going to stop him from getting to the paint when he continues to attack when the shooters are knocking down shots? So that's really the change. They've just played harder. They just made shots. And that's all the Bucks have done. They continue to suffocate the Boston Celtics with their style of play.
Especially in Game 2, everybody was hitting shots. So the Celtics had to make some sort of adjustment for Game 3, and there's not much they can do. Do you still think the Celtics can come back and win this series?
No.
Interesting. We'll see. We'll see tomorrow.
No.
We'll see what you say tomorrow about that one.
Because I'm not seeing maximum level performance from Kyrie, Tatum, and Hayward. Guys that I trust when things get tough that play for Boston, other than Kyrie, because I'm not talking about his championship pedigree. I'm talking about, we know that's his skill. It ain't that he's doing like effort plays or dirty work plays. I trust Jalen Brown, I trust Morris, and I trust Al Horford. And I trust another guy that they might get back in this series, Marcus Smart.
Yeah, he should be back.
Now, if he's back and the Bucks get Malcolm Brogdon, to me, what Smart gives them defensively, Brogdon gives the Bucks offensively. So it's going to be a great series, but now I have to give an edge to the Milwaukee Bucks.
Right now, it is time for Socially Awkward. Jalen, sometimes in social media, things get awkward. And this is no exception. I love this one so much. There was a young woman, and, she wanted to talk to Bryce Harper. So what do you do nowadays? Slide in the DMs. So here's what she had to say in Bryce Harper's DMs. Hey, handsome, I'm Jordan. I'm just trying to be your stress reliever. Things have been stressful for Bryce. Well, guess what? Here is the response from someone. If you're going to go after a married man, the least you could do is be smart enough to send it to his Instagram account, not his wife's.
Oh, no!
She slid into Kayla Harper's DMs, not Bryce Harper's DMs. Big shout to Kayla for making this public and calling her out. Jalen, what do you think about this?
I'm normally not speechless. If you ever, want to recall a time that I didn't have a response,
this is it. My quick thing is this. The only reason she did this is because she was probably looking to see if he was married, found his wife's page, and then accidentally slayed. Oh, gosh, she messed up. She got to delete her account. Instagram should just delete her account for her.
But you know what? The best things that happened to Bryce, besides the fact he's terrific at baseball, besides the fact he got $300 million to play the game, besides the fact I'm sure he has a lovely wife and he's in a committed relationship, he got saved here.
If they allow us to come back on television after this break, we have some really revealing words from LeBron James. We'll give them to you right for this.
Hasn't made it 3 in this round yet, and they need him to step up. But I also think Milwaukee is a little bit better team. I think Milwaukee's the better team. And, when you're playing the better team, your guys can't just play decently. They've got to exceed what they've done in the regular season. And you and I were just talking about Golden State, at times being up and down and not quite as dominant or consistently dominant. That was Boston's problem all year. there were nights when they looked like the team everybody thought they were going to be this year, and there were other nights when they didn't, and that inconsistency catches up with you more so the deeper you get in the playoffs.
PJ Carlissimo, I'm going to tell you a conclusion that I've reached, and your basketball expertise is something I never, ever have a problem deferring to because you've forgotten more than I know. But I'm going to tell you what I believe in my heart. The Milwaukee Bucks are the one team that I look at and say, wait a minute. They could beat the Golden State Warriors. Now, I know we have to talk about Golden State in Houston in just a second, but recognizing the reigning two-time defending NBA champions, 3 titles in the last 4 years, that is the Golden State Warriors, as the prohibitive favorite, when I look at any other team out there, I view Houston potentially giving them a run for their money. Boston potentially giving them a run for their money if things go right, et cetera, et cetera. But Milwaukee, because of their length, their defense, and their perimeter shooting and coaching, I think legitimately has a chance to beat a team like the Golden State Warriors due to Golden State's lack of depth. To that, you say what?
The consistency worries me more than the depth. I just you can't be up and down, and they've proven me wrong, by the way. When they were consistent and won, 73, they didn't win, and when they were in and out like they were last year, they turned it on and they did win in the end. But I think this year they're more vulnerable than they've been. They don't close out games very well at all. They let teams back in, and they still have a penchant for turnovers. They're so careless by their standards with the ball. I mean, when you score as much as they score, you're going to turn the ball over more. That's the thing that sometimes I think people don't realize. But I just don't think they're as tied together to this point as they've been. And I love the Bucks. And everybody's kind of forgetting, Malcolm Brogdon was 50, 40, 90 this year. If when he comes back, I don't think it's going to be tonight, but if when he comes back, he gets close to what he's done in the regular season, that's a whole nother excellent player that Bud gets to add to the mix.
PJ Carlissimo right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. PJ, let's transition to this series out here. But before we even get into that, you obviously watched Portland. You've watched Denver. What have you made of that series? And has this been a coming out party for the Joke himself, Nikola Jokic, who's averaging 26, 13, and 9 in this series against Portland? Talk to me about Denver for a second against the Blazers.
You know, I thought it was going to be more a coming out party for Damian. Not that people don't know how good Damian Lillard and C.J. McCollum are, but I thought it was going to be more about them stepping up, and it's been Denver. You know, the country, we don't have them on enough nationally. I say we, ESPN or Turner. They didn't get the national exposure. Everybody knew their backcourt was very good. You know, people knew Murray. People should have known Gary Harris. People didn't realize how good the Joker is. There's no question, and he's so versatile. Still amazing to me that he and Nurkic were together in Denver. I mean, that's incredible. Nurkic, because he's hurt now and kind of forgotten, but you're talking two of the most skilled bigs in the entire league. I think it's a great series. I think Damian hasn't been otherworldly to this point. I think he's going to be. I think the last 3 games in that series are going to be tremendous. I don't think the home court's going to be a big factor. I just think it's going to be which backcourt steps up and whether Enes Kanter and Zach Collins and those front court guys can slow the Joker down a little bit. But I think that's a lot of people were sleeping on that series, I think, because everybody said, well, whoever wins Golden State Houston, A is going to win the West and B is probably going to win the whole thing. But I think people should spend some time, if they haven't already, watching Denver and Portland, because there's a ton of young players. There's 2 really good coaches, and there's 2 teams that are a lot better than people probably realized when the playoffs started.
PJ Carlissimo, let's transition to the series that I'm covering right now, the Houston Rockets against the Golden State Warriors. In a lot of people's eyes, this is the NBA championship series, even though the Eastern Conference has been entertaining and competitive. When you look at this series, how it unfolds, what did you take away from Monday night's performance by James Harden? I know Eric Gordon had a tremendous game. CP3 not as active, even though he's shooting a good percentage from the field. But it was James Harden hitting a couple of big shots down the stretch, finishing the game with 41 points. It was Steph Curry not being that guy, particularly in the last game, having arguably the worst postseason game of his career. What were your thoughts about what you saw following Game 3, Houston's win?
Well, super impressed by James bouncing back. I can't say I'm surprised, but I tell you, the way his eyes looked, I mean, we were sitting our radio position, Adam Amin and I were right next to the Houston bench. Every time he came out of a timeout and I'm looking right into his eyes going, wow. I wasn't sure there was going to be a lingering effect. They can't win. I mean, his talent, it's a good roster. It's a very good roster they've put together. Eric Gordon has played great. I think he's been their best player. Obviously, Chris Paul's a great player. I love P.J. Tucker's competitiveness and what he does. Capella, after game one, has been really good. They can't win unless James plays like that. He can't even play good. He's got to play great. He's got to make a big shot or two down the stretch for them to win. I'm not sure they can do it 4 times against them, but their only shot is when James Harden plays, like James Harden and just baffles the defense, with the passes, with the hitting the pick and roll guys. Golden State did a great job in the first 2 games, taking away the lob and the roll to the basket. And, if you can limit James to kind of one aspect of the game, let him score a ton, but he can't score a ton, get to the free throw line, and get a whole bunch of assists all at the same time. And he's able to do that. But I just can't imagine Steph missing the shots that he missed or Clay missing the shots that he missed down the stretch. I'm really looking forward to, after our game's over, just going back and watching this one tonight.
Dissect this for me, PJ, as a shooter, because you've been around many shooters throughout your career. As a shooter, watching guys like a Steph Curry having that dislocated finger injury, it was on his non-shooting hand, but 2 of those fingers have been taped together. How much, if at all, of an impact did you anticipate, or would you really explain that may have had on his shooting performance over games 2 and 3?
I think it definitely would. I don't think there's any question, particularly him, because people forget about Steph. He's so good at going to the basket and finishing inside. I think he and Kyrie are the 2 best, going over, using the backboard. They go in there, and it doesn't matter how big the guy is. They just shoot it higher up on the glass than they do. I mean, he tried to dunk the one, flat out just missed a layup on the other one. I don't want to give him a pass and saying he'll be the first one to say he should have made those shots. There's no question. But I think the same way that James' eyes, because it wasn't one eye, he got raked in both of them in game 2. That bothering him, I give Steph some love for that. But again, you got to play. It's different when you're playing with 2 fingers taped together. Yeah, I know it's his non-shooting hand, but I think it's a difference. And frankly, he gets a lot of deflections also. That's another thing he does on the other end. So I think it inhibits his defense a little bit. So, a factor for sure. But no, not a deciding factor, and not to miss some of the shots that Steph missed down the stretch.
PJ Carlissimo right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Before I let you get on out of here, just give me